We all do it. You open the fridge, find last night's leftovers, and hit reheat. 2 minutes later, it's steaming again. Comfort reborn in a bowl. But here's the truth, not every food survives that second round safely. Some turn bitter, unstable, even harmful once microwaved. It's not superstition, it's science. Heat changes structure, breaks down oils, scrambles proteins, and wakes up bacteria that were asleep in the cold. And the danger doesn't always show itself in smell or taste. It hides behind a familiar warmth inside foods we trust most: pasta, steak oils, even that soothing cup of tea. For older adults, the line between warm and ready and damaged and dangerous can be razor thin. Today we'll look at 7 everyday foods that react badly to a microwave, not because they're bad foods, but because heat bends their nature. So before you press start again, watch this first. On pasta. You see it sitting in the fridge, a big bowl of yesterday's pasta, maybe with cream or tomato sauce still clinging to the edges. It smells fine, looks fine. It feels like the definition of safe comfort. But inside that softness, something has already started changing. The truth is, pasta isn't as simple as it looks. Once cooked and cooled, the starch hardens and locks in moisture pockets deep inside. When that pasta is mixed with sauce, especially creamy ones, the problem doubles. The surface may bubble under the microwave, but the center stays only halfway warm, and that's where bacteria like Bacillus cereus can quietly survive. You won't see it. You won't smell it. You'll just feel off later without knowing why. Scientists have warned about this for years. Starch-rich foods are perfect carriers for heat-resistant spores. They can survive boiling water, sit still in the cold, and wait for a second chance. Once reheated unevenly, those spores wake up, multiply fast, and release toxins that no amount of extra microwaving can undo. It's not just food poisoning. For older adults, that means nausea cramps or worse, dehydration that takes days to recover from. Think about how pasta is built. Each noodle holds layers of heat and air differently. When you scoop from a large container, the outer layer heats first, the middle follows later, and the inner mass stays cool far too long. That's the danger zone between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit where bacteria thrive. The microwave doesn't fix it. It often makes it worse, tricking your eyes with steam but leaving the center untouched. A woman named Grace once told researchers she'd had this happen more than once. "It never tasted spoiled," she said, "just a little off." I thought it was the sauce. The culprit wasn't the sauce. It was the slow cooling, the tight container, and the quick reheat before dinner. Like many of us, she didn't know pasta could behave this way. The science behind it is simple but sneaky. Bacteria love moisture and starch. Cream and cheese only help them spread. And when microwaves, heat from the outside and temperature becomes uneven by design. The top may look piping hot, but just 2 inches down can sit well below safe levels. Even if you stir halfway, heat doesn't always travel fast enough to kill what's hiding there. Still, the fix is simple. Cool cooked pasta quickly within an hour after eating. Divide leftovers into small portions before refrigerating. When reheating, skip the microwave if you can. Use a pan on low heat, add a splash of water or milk, and stir until it steams evenly from edge to center. You'll taste the difference not just in safety, but in texture too. Comfort food should stay comforting, not risky. So the next time that bowl calls your name, take an extra minute. Stir. Reheat slowly. Trust warmth, you can see, not the one that only looks right. Because comfort food stays comforting only when handled with care. To steak. Have you ever thought a leftover steak was perfectly safe once it looked hot again? If yes, stop that thought right there. Because what happens inside a slab of meat under microwave heat isn't cooking. It's an uncontrolled experiment in biology and physics colliding. At first glance, everything seems normal. The surface sizzles, steam escapes. The smell returns rich and familiar, but beneath that crust, the story is very different. Microwaves don't heat evenly. Their energy penetrates in waves, exciting water molecules near the surface first. Dense protein, thick fibers, and residual fat act as barriers, creating what food scientists call a thermal gradient, zones of intense heat next to pockets that remain dangerously cool. Those pockets are where bacteria thrive. The U.S. Department of Agriculture classifies Clostridium perfringens and Salmonella enterica as the 2 most common culprits in reheated meat illnesses. Both organisms can survive mild cooking, especially when food has been cooled too slowly or stored too long. The outer edges of a steak might reach 160 degrees Fahrenheit, a temperature that looks safe while its core hovers around 100 or less. That is the perfect incubator for bacterial revival. Dr. Michael Doyle, former director at the Center for Food Safety at the University of Georgia, Once noted that Clostridium perfringens can multiply to infectious doses within hours if food remains in the temperature danger zone between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. A leftover steak reheated unevenly in a microwave often spends just enough time in that zone to allow those spores to awaken. Once active, they release enterotoxins, microscopic proteins that attack the lining of the small intestine. Clinically, the impact is sharp and fast. Within 6 to 12 hours, nausea sets in. Abdominal cramping follows. Then diarrhea, sudden, violent, and dehydrating. In younger adults, it passes quickly. But in older bodies, where hydration and electrolyte balance are already fragile, this chain reaction can push the kidneys and heart into overwork. Gastroenterologists call this post-thermal microbial shock, where mild infection spirals into systemic stress. There's also a chemical side to the danger. Repeated heating of red meat promotes lipid oxidation, the breakdown of natural fats into reactive aldehydes. These compounds have been studied by the Journal of Food Science for their link to inflammation markers in human tissue. When consumed frequently, oxidized fats contribute to arterial stiffness and cellular damage, compounding cardiovascular risk already elevated with age. In other words, one careless reheat may not send someone to the hospital, but the pattern over months or years erodes resilience in ways you can't smell or taste. Every flash of uneven heat is a small biochemical disturbance bacteria. Revived fats, destabilized proteins cross-linked into forms the body struggles to digest. Beneath that seared surface, the steak becomes less of a meal and more of a test. A test of how much imbalance the human body can absorb. 3 oils. Same as steak, don't you ever reheat your oil. There are hidden risks waiting the moment that pan goes back on heat. What looks like a shortcut to save money or time becomes a chemistry lesson gone wrong. According to the Journal of Hazardous Materials in a 2022 study archived in PubMed Central, once an oil passes its first heating cycle, it begins breaking down at the molecular level. Triglycerides, the natural structure that keeps oil stable, split under repeated heat, producing free fatty acids and peroxides. These molecules don't just make your kitchen smell burnt, they start a cascade known as lipid oxidation. From there come aldehydes, acrylamide, and other reactive compounds tied to oxidative stress in the human body. In lab tests, scientists found reheated oils raise levels of malondialdehyde, a biomarker directly associated with vascular inflammation and early arterial stiffness. Chemically speaking, every reheating turns oil less like food and more like fuel. The clear golden hue turns amber, then brown. The viscosity thickens. Bubbles stay longer on the surface because polymer chains begin to form sticky structures that cling to pans and to your gut alike. Studies in food chemistry journals describe these as polar polymers residues that can resist digestion and alter lipid metabolism. For older adults, they add one more layer of silent stress to the liver and circulatory system. But you don't need a microscope to sense it. Heat old oil once more and it tells its own story. The scent shifts from nutty to metallic, then to something close to burnt sugar and rubber. The surface that once shimmered evenly now ripples unevenly as if tired. When food hits it, the sound isn't the sharp crackle of life, but a slow, soggy hiss. The flavor follows dull, greasy, with a faint bitterness that stays on the tongue long after the plate is cleared. There's no crispness, no brightness, just the taste of something that's already been through too much. Experts call this sensory degradation, a polite way of saying the oil is dying. Dr. Rajiv Chowdhury from the University of Cambridge once summarized it plainly: reused oils form reactive compounds that persist in the bloodstream, affecting lipid profiles and endothelial function. In simple words, what clings to your fries might also cling to your arteries, and yet it's a scene repeated daily. A man wakes early, opens his small kitchen window, and sets the pan back on the stove. The oil left from yesterday's fried fish sits cloudy but familiar. He thinks it's just one more use. The burner clicks. A faint smoke thread rises. He drops in a piece of bread to test the heat. It turns dark in seconds, smelling of metal and burnt grain. He stares at it for a moment, shakes his head, and tips the pan into the sink. The oil runs thick and slow, sticking to the metal like glue. No word is spoken, just the sound of the faucet washing away what chemistry already ruined. For tea. We all reheat tea. It feels harmless, just warmth, right? A quick spin in the microwave, a small comfort reclaimed. But what happens inside that cup in those few seconds isn't comfort returning. It's chemistry shifting against you. By the time the liquid begins to swirl and steam again, the molecular balance of tea has already changed. Researchers from Food Chemistry and the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry confirmed that reheating brewed tea causes its key antioxidants catechins, such as epigallocatechin, gallate EGCG, to degrade rapidly. These are the same compounds that help neutralize free radicals and support vascular health. Above 60 degrees Celsius, they lose structure and convert into quinonase substances with little or no antioxidant activity. At the same time, caffeine and tannins become more concentrated. As water molecules evaporate unevenly, the tea turns slightly acidic. What once soothed now irritates. The thin, oily-looking film that forms on the surface isn't oil at all. It's oxidized polyphenols binding with minerals, the visible mark of degradation. The taste confirms the change: harsher, metallic, and bitter. Scientific analyses show that this transformation doesn't just alter flavor, it changes how the body responds. The loss of catechins and rise in tannins reduce the drink's anti-inflammatory potential while increasing its astringency. In lab conditions, reheated tea has been shown to elevate oxidative stress markers in human plasma. Essentially, instead of calming cells, it may exhaust them. For older adults whose stomach linings and hydration levels are more sensitive, that means stronger acidity and less benefit. Dr. Zhang Weiman of the National Institute of Nutrition and Food Safety notes that catechins are thermolabile. Once oxidized, their radical scavenging activity declines sharply. In plain terms, the longer tea is exposed to reheating, the less healing remains in the cup. The antioxidants that once shielded the body from stress become the very products of it. The visual change tells the same story. Fresh tea gleams lightly, moving like silk in the cup. Reheated tea grows darker, thicker, and dull. The scent of floral calm turns flat, carrying a faint metal note. The change is not dramatic, but molecularly it's complete. So the next time you reach for that mug, skip the microwave. Brew a new one. It's not wasteful, it's chemical wisdom. Fresh tea carries living compounds that protect balance and repair. Reheated tea carries their remains. And for something meant to soothe the body, nothing defeats its purpose faster than drinking what no longer can. 5 milk. He thought it would save time. The baby was crying. The clock said 2 in the morning, and he reached for the bottle his wife had pumped earlier that evening. He popped it into the microwave, pressed 30 seconds, and waited. The soft hum filled the kitchen. When he turned, she was standing at the doorway, tired, wide-eyed, and quietly furious. She didn't shout. She just said one word: stop. Because she knew what he didn't. Under that gentle hum, the milk's biology was being rewritten. Microwaves don't heat evenly. Their radiation excites water molecules in unpredictable clusters. In a bottle, that means one patch may stay at body temperature while another reaches near boiling. Pediatricians call this the thermal pocket effect, invisible spots of heat, capable of burning a baby's mouth or throat before an adult hand even senses danger. But temperature is only half the story. Studies from the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Journal of Pediatric Gastroenterology and Nutrition 2020 show that microwave exposure above 60 degrees Celsius damages the very proteins that make milk biologically protective. Enzymes like lactoferrin and lysozyme, which normally help fight bacteria in an infant's gut, begin to denature. The antibodies immunoglobulin A and M unravel, losing their shape and purpose. What was once a living fluid rich with immune defense becomes chemically depleted, closer to warm water with calories. Clinically speaking, the loss isn't visible, but it's measurable. In lab tests, breast milk reheated by microwave for as little as 30 seconds showed a 30 to 40% reduction in antibacterial activity. The natural microflora balance shifts, allowing bacterial spores, especially Chronobacter sakazaki, to grow if the milk stands for even a short time afterward. That bacteria is not hypothetical. It has been directly linked to fatal infant infections, particularly when formula or pumped milk is reheated, cooled, and reused. Underheat milk's delicate fat globules also change structure. Homogenization breaks down, forming thin films of oxidized fat near the bottle wall. Pediatric dietitians from the Cleveland Clinic describe this as lipid phase separation, where oxidized molecules interact with air pockets, further degrading nutritional quality. The result is a bottle that might look perfect, smell fine, and still deliver chemical imbalance at the first sip. The wife knew all of this because she'd read every label, every late-night article, every warning taped to the hospital bassinet. She stepped forward, took the bottle from his hand, and tilted it slightly. The top layer shimmered unevenly, bubbles trapped under the surface. "It's too hot in one spot," she whispered. "You just can't see it." He looked down, realizing that the shortcut wasn't saving time. It was undoing everything that made that milk safe. That bottle was not nourishment anymore. It was a mixture of denatured enzymes, fractured antibodies, and residual heat in search of a target. In homes, these accidents happen usually. Parents, meanwhile, adults warm leftovers for themselves and think milk should behave the same. But milk is alive even when stored cold. Its chemistry responds to heat faster than any recipe ever could. The rule remains the same: warmth means safety only when it's even. 6. Processed meat. I think I need to tell you, I used to reheat processed meats all the time. Bacon, sausages, deli ham, whatever was left from breakfast or last night's sandwich. It was quick, easy, and it always smelled good. I thought as long as it sizzled again, it was safe. But one night I stumbled on an article that made me rethink everything. It was from the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry, a study about what happens when you reheat cured or smoked meats. The title looked harmless, something about thermal stability of nitrite-cured proteins, but the findings hit hard. Researchers had tested bacon and ham after multiple rounds of microwave reheating, and found that each cycle didn't just warm them, it changed them. The nitrites used for curing started forming nitrosamines, and the fats broke down into something called cholesterol oxidation products, or EOPs. Both are compounds that don't belong in the body for long. According to the scientists, these chemicals form because of a simple rule in chemistry: when cured proteins and fats meet heat, especially high, uneven heat, they rearrange. Nitrites that once preserved color and flavor react with amino acids to create N-nitrosamines molecules recognized by toxicologists as mutagenic. That means they can damage DNA directly. Meanwhile, the cholesterol in those thin slices oxidizes, turning into reactive byproducts that irritate blood vessel linings and contribute to what's clinically called endothelial stress, the first step toward inflammation and arterial stiffness. At first I thought it was exaggerated. I mean, it's just bacon, right? But then I read further. The Food Chemistry 2022 study measured an 80% increase in COPS after just 2 reheats. The authors compared it to reheating oil. Once those molecules break down, they don't return to their original form. You can't unburn cholesterol. And when I looked closer, I realized how familiar the process was. That faint metallic scent when microwaved ham comes out, the way it gets tough on the edges and oily in the center. That wasn't just overcooking, it was chemistry reacting under stress. Clinically, these changes aren't small. COPS have been shown to affect the way the liver processes fats, altering HDL and LDL ratios. Nitrosamines, meanwhile, bypass digestion and enter the bloodstream directly. For someone older or anyone with metabolic or heart concerns, that's not minor. It's the kind of damage that adds up quietly, molecule by molecule, meal by meal. That night, I turned off the screen, went to the kitchen and looked at the container of leftover sausage links I was planning to microwave for breakfast. I tossed them out instead. Since then, I haven't reheated processed meat once. When I want bacon, I cook it fresh. When there's ham left over, I eat it cold. It takes a few more minutes, but it's better than taking risks I can't see. I'm not saying you have to quit bacon or deli sandwiches, just stop reviving them with heat. Heat amplifies what preservation already began. Once the chemistry turns, no amount of crispness can make it safe again. Because I learned the hard way, the problem isn't the meat. It's what we ask it to survive one more round in the microwave. 7. Cream. Cream looks harmless, smooth, white, comforting. It's the taste of quiet nights, family dinners, and recipes passed down without question. A spoon of Alfredo sauce, a bowl of cream soup, a bit of leftover gratin, they all promise the same thing: warmth and satisfaction. But when you reheat them, that same softness turns deceptive. What once meant nourishment starts turning unstable, one molecule at a time. At first it feels innocent. You open the fridge, see that leftover bowl, and think it just needs a minute. The microwave hums. Steam fogs the glass. When the timer beeps, you see bubbles rising and a rich aroma spreading through the room. But underneath that familiar scent, chemistry is shifting fast. As the temperature passes 60 degrees Celsius, the delicate emulsion, that natural harmony of milk, fat, protein, and water, begins to separate. The glossy smoothness you once admired splits into layers. Pockets of oil rise to the top while proteins curdle below, each responding differently to heat. Chemically, that split is where the trouble starts. The free fats in cream begin a process called lipid oxidation, reacting with oxygen to produce peroxides, aldehydes, and ketones reactive compounds that attack cells the same way rust attacks metal. At the same time, the milk proteins denature. Their folded chains unwind, exposing amino groups that bond with sugar molecules. That bond forms advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, which researchers connect to long-term inflammation, skin and tissue aging, and insulin resistance. In 2021, scientists at Food Chemistry and the Journal of Dairy Science ran controlled tests on dairy-based sauces. When reheated to common household temperatures, age levels nearly doubled compared to fresh versions. In simpler terms, the longer and hotter a cream dish is reheated, the more its chemistry drifts from food towards something closer to a reactive mass. Those reactions don't stop once you turn off the heat either. Oxidation continues slowly as the sauce cools, leaving behind invisible residues the body must process later. You can actually see the evidence with your eyes. The sauce thickens unevenly. The edges bubble before the center does. A thin, oily sheen appears, what chemists call the fat bloom of separation. The smell changes too, not burnt, not spoiled, but oddly sharp like butter that sat out too long. That sour-sweet tang is aldehyde release. And once that happens, flavor is the least of your concerns because it means those molecular bonds are breaking down for good. Dr. Linda Thompson, a dairy technologist who has studied thermal stress and emulsions, explains it clearly. Once the fat phase separates, oxidation accelerates on its own even at moderate heat. You can't restore the structure once it's gone. That means stirring harder or microwaving longer doesn't fix it, it worsens it. I used to ignore that. I'd warm up cream sauces, soups, even casseroles because the idea of wasting food felt worse than a little change in texture. But after reading those studies and watching what actually happens inside the pan, I changed. Now I reheat gently over the stove at low heat, stirring slowly to keep the emulsion stable. Or when possible, I make smaller batches and finish them fresh. Because cream doesn't forgive heat, it only endures it once. The better way is slower, more patient, and more mindful. Heat can feed or it can harm. It depends entirely on how gently we use it, and how much truth we're willing to see in what boils beneath the surface. Most people think danger comes from what's raw, but more often it's what's reheated that quietly betrays us. In the name of convenience, we warm leftovers again and again, not realizing that heat in excess changes food at its core. Proteins unfold, fats oxidize, vitamins collapse. And in that cycle, comfort turns into chemistry. This isn't a call for fear, it's a call for awareness. Food was meant to be alive, dynamic, and freshly handled. When we rush the process, we trade safety for seconds. The microwave may be fast, but biology never is. So next time you reach for a plate, remember this warmth isn't the enemy, but imbalance is. Reheat, gently eat mindfully, and when in doubt, start fresh. Because in food, just like in health, what we save in time, we often lose in trust.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.